Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Um, like to say, welcome back to most likely the last actual episode of the series that I've been working on, my wonderful work resume, due to the fact of the position that I ended up getting. I actually got this back in September, but it was just a matter of just getting through the process of getting it and just settling into it. So pretty much based off the last episode, I obviously touched a little bit into my last position, which was me being a juvenile probation officer. Didn't go into full details, just a matter of the whole process of waiting to actually get into it. And so now, since it's been a couple months since I've been in it, I finally feel clear and comfortable enough to actually talk about my time as a juvenile probation officer. So yeah, like I said in the last episode, I got the position, well, technically hired for the position back in September of 2023, but had to wait until October 27th to actually get in due to the process of going down and talking to pretty much every previous job that I had just to see if they can get more info on me and just make sure I was actual fit for the job, even though they hired me before doing that part. When I got in, first day in, it is a small office in the middle of downtown of where I was, but the process of actually being a juvenile probation officer was still starting from what I found out. Even when I got in, pretty much when I got there, I had my very small office, but at the same time, though, it was just like, a shock to me. It was like, man, I got an office, I got my name on like a little placard, and got my name on a board and all that. And I was like, man, I feel special. Felt special, felt great seeing that, but there's going to be a lot to it. And like I said, the process was just starting with me actually getting in there. So with that part of me getting into it, the first couple months is just mostly training until I actually would get sent up to Tallahassee for a 1 month training to pass the certification part to be considered an official juvenile probation officer. So those first couple months, it was more of just me shadowing and learning the process of how it is to be a juvenile probation officer, but mostly how it is at the office that I worked at. So obviously it's a state job, but how they actually go is based off circuits. So the county I was in was considered Circuit 5, which is connected to a few other counties that are surrounding, and every circuit has their ways of moving. And so the main thing that I was learning during the process of shadowing and learning about the position was that Circuit 5 worked really, really different compared to every other circuit, and also even compared to how the standard textbook version of a juvenile probation officer is supposed to be. So it was definitely kind of like a conflicting thing on how to actually approach the studying and also preparing for the actual certification exam, because the main thing that I heard during those first couple months that I was learning about the position and getting prepped for it before I had to leave to go do the exam was, hey, the book says this way, you want to study for it this way for the exam, but as soon as you are done with it and when you come back, you can kind of just like throw a majority of that to the wayside, because we work differently in this circuit. And it wasn't just like, something that, a few co-workers were saying, but this is being said by everybody. This is being said by my supervisor, my senior, which is kind of like the person under your supervisor, and even the actual assistant chief and chief of the entire circuit. they were telling me this the entire time. So I'm like, I'm putting all this effort in studying and shadowing, and it's like majority of the stuff that they have on like the practice and pre-exam stuff, they're telling us like, yeah, just use that for this. But when you actually come back and doing the actual position, you can throw a lot of that to the wayside. So that was in the back of my mind for a while. So pretty much, I didn't like. I think I wasn't allowed. I technically wasn't allowed to do anything other than just shadow and study. So pretty much from that October all the way up to what was it? I think it was like February. No, January is when I wrapped up everything up for my pre stuff that had to be done. That's all I did. Like I would be able to ride along with a few people and also just see how everybody worked with the system and things like that. But it was again just a lot of studying. But at the same time though, with some of the main issues that I have with the position that would kind of drag on is like it was kind of definitely a lot of clicky stuff. I'll say that, like very, very clicky. Very, you had to be in the group to be accepted, and it kind of showed early. I definitely had a hard time getting a lot of stuff done because we had a checklist that had to be done for the pre stuff, and you know, for me, it took a while to get knocked out, and it wasn't because of lack of effort, because that's never been the case when it comes to me in a position. It was just a matter of when you have to approach or deal with other people that are working, if they aren't willing to help you out, then you're gonna have to wait until somebody is actually available or actually wants to help you out, which I had the issue of that because, not too many people were willing to help out to start off, and that would kind of linger around how I approached everyone in the office for a while, all the way up to the end. So one of my coworkers, who I'm actually still cool with post this position, he ended up actually getting hired, I think like a month after me. And so again, me still doing the pre stuff, it's like he was able to get everything knocked out quick. Like it took me again all the way until January to get everything done, and he was able to get it all done. And he showed up in the middle of November, and he was done by the start of December. And I was just like, okay. Again, the click stuff, it'll pop up a lot when it comes to position, but that kind of was a flag situation there. But also within the actual office there, we have our three different, I guess to say groups that actually work within the office. But we're all probation officers, but we all have like different sections that we have to take care of when it comes to the kids. My group was mostly based off the zip codes, based on some of the kids that we had to take care of. The other group had to take care of the kids based on the zip codes, and the third group, they dealt with the kids that were a little bit more, labeled more high risk. These were kids with like gun charges, multiple to, and when I say multiple, I mean like 5 or more felonies and things like that. That's the group that, dealt with kids wherever their zip code was. It didn't matter, it's just a matter of their risk level. So that's how our groups were split up. So with my group, again, it was just a matter of, get any kid that was in our jurisdiction. So there was nothing like really special about the group. It was just a matter of zip codes. So with that, I didn't have to really, at first I didn't think I had to worry about anything super crazy, just because it's like, all right, hey, I'm not dealing with the kids that, are higher risk, carrying guns, could get violated anytime, got to go chase after them, things like that. Like, no, I wouldn't have to. At least that's what I thought at first. So when January hit, I was pretty much told that, I had to wait until a spot became available to actually go out and take the exam. And at first it was just a matter of what was available to, hey, let's just make it to where you and my coworker who came in after me, we'll just set it up so y'all can both go at the same time, and y'all can come back at the same time, and then get started official at the same time. So y'all don't have to, we don't have to send up multiple people for multiple trips or exams. So I was like, all right, cool. So again, February was a slow month, but it was more just me just preparing, because with the actual exam, the way they do it is we have to go to a actual campus, and it's like right outside of Tallahassee, and we stay there for a month. So that was a interesting month, I'll say that. Like, it kind of reminded me like, when I first went off to college, but then it's like when I actually got there, I was like, yeah, this is nothing like how I went off to college. First, it was like in the middle of the woods. It was like chilled out in the middle of the woods. I think it was like a 4 or 5 hour trip from where I lived at. No, it was about 4 hours. Yeah. And it was just straight up isolation. Like that's the best way I can put it. But at the same time, though, it was like with my mindset, it was just like, hey, I'm here to pass this exam and go back and actually start getting to work. But at the same time, though, I had in the back of my mind, just because of how things were in the office and just how the buildup was, with everyone telling me like, hey, just pass, but just know like none of this is really going to matter when you come back. That was also in the back of my mind. So first day at the actual campus, and I had to deal with a little bit of, profiling, which was crazy to deal with, but I got over it. And crazy enough, the people that tried to profile me were in the same group as me with the other JPOs in training to, get their certification. Didn't call them out on it, but it was kind of like, awkward situation. But during that whole month, it was just me doing the bare minimum of really interacting with most of the other JPOs, because again, we're all coming from different parts of Florida. Like, we had some people that were just up the road from here. We had some people all the way from like way South Florida. It was just like, we're all coming from different circuits. We're gonna be leaving here, to come JPOs officially, but the way we're gonna handle it is all different. So I know some people would be like, take the chance to, enjoy the month, try to enjoy being around other people going the same process as you. But for me at that time, it was just like, I'm just here to focus. I'm here to get everything knocked out and, get back home. Because around this time, it was just like, I'm like on the fence even more. Like the first week, it was just like, mostly studying. The actual exam, well, not even the exam person, but the proctor, he was a cool guy. But him telling us his story about him becoming a JPO to up to where he is now as a proctor, it didn't help. Like his story made me want to get into teaching so bad, because it was just like, he told us like, he came pretty much straight out of college to become a JPO, and when he did it, it was a really, really low paying position, where it was like, it would have been more of a struggle if he didn't meet his wife and she wasn't like pushing him to keep going and try to further her up. But it was just like, he worked from JPO up to senior to supervisor, and then got into where he is to be an exam holder and, proctor. And that's where he finally felt comfortable. But other than that, it was a struggle. And not of the position, but due to the pay. And the thing is, though, he was actually the second person that kind of told us that, and that kind of sat in the back of my head, because, a few months back when we were still doing all of our pre-stuff, our person who did our coverage for the actual learning of the system, that proctor, she was kind of like the same thing. Like, when she heard how much we were making, she was like, wow, that's crazy, because I was making like maybe half of what y'all were making. and I made it all the way up to, you know, a senior position and still didn't make as much as y'all making now. And this person, she was maybe only like, I think she was only like 35. So she was only like a little bit older than me, but she had been in there so long. But again, it wasn't like, the main thing I noticed was the progress was up and then hop off to a different branch within. It wasn't, hey, I want to work my way up to be a chief. It's like, let's at least get to a senior position or a supervisor position and then hop off into another branch so you can actually be in a livable position and be in a less stressful position. That's the main thing I noticed when it came to a lot of the things that we would hear from the proctors when it comes to the certification. So pretty much hearing what the first proctor was saying, it was just like, yeah, let me keep that in mind for the long run if I actually want to stay in this. So the first week, again, mostly just getting used to the living conditions there, which wasn't good at all. Pretty much I was studying, like crash course studying, and then the way it was for us, we had to do pretty much a works day of being on campus and actually studying and doing the class. So pretty much we got up at 7, had to be in class by 8, and then we'll be out of class by 4. And that was, pretty much the same thing. Like, we're pretty much at work, and we know obviously we're gonna get paid while we're there, but it was just like, yeah, there was no skipping, there was no excuses. Like, you had to be there. Like, if you missed too many of the days, then you would just be told, like, all right, you can go home. They would call wherever your circuit was, the office, and let them know, like, hey, this person just got to come back another, like, month or later whenever we have the next, opening, because they couldn't keep up or they were not in class. And I think that only happened to one person, and a few people that dropped out just because, again, they had other stuff going on. And that's why I was so logged in, because I was just like, I don't want to let this month of time that I put in go to the wayside. And that's why I was just so focused. And it definitely rubbed some people the wrong way, which was crazy. Just because, and if it wasn't anything dealing with studying or anything like that, it seemed like I was offish, but it was just like, I was just there to study and get out. Like, I'm sorry it came off like that, but it was just like, that's where my mind was, because I was focused on doing what I needed to do to keep this position, and obviously to keep the position, I needed to make sure I got this certification. So the first week, that was mostly, again, studying and prepping. Second week is when we had to take, the second week was kind of more of the same thing. The third week is when the actual partner we had, he actually had to leave because he got sick, so they had to bring in a sub. And this is when we took our first exam. There was 3 exams that you had to take and you had to pass. The first one was focused on a few of the rules and bylaws and things like that. I passed that. Again, I was studying. I was too locked in not to pass. And then follow-up was pretty much an exam on the actual system that we would use to process everything when we actually do our job back at our offices. So past those, then we had to do a mock, pretty much like a mock trial of how we would approach the situation of what do we think is the right recommendation for a juvenile or a youth, as a terminology, on their case. So pretty much we'd get dummy files with a bunch of kids, and then whatever one that pretty much we get called out to study for as a group, we pretty much have to approach the proctors, who would pretty much be like the judge, and present on why this kid should either be put on probation or sent to a program. That one went well. The only problem with that was, like, we had one person in our group who kind of went AWOL and went completely against what the group was going with. And so it was an awkward situation, but I think the proctors ended up talking to that person after, but they gave us a pass on it. So yeah. Once we got to the last week for the last exam, it was mostly on the computer, and that one kind of it was easy. But the problem I had with it was like the way that it was set up, system wise and setup wise. It was pretty much like the pre-exams that we were taking back in the office, and I was just like, we could have did this one like back in the office, back in our actual home space. And it was just like that whole build up to this day to pass this exam, and it's pretty much the exact same thing. Well, the exact same layout that what we were doing with our pre-exams, months ago. And so that one kind of made me, deflated. Best way to say it, because I was just like, man, this is interesting. Like this one we could have did back at home. So obviously I passed it. The next day, which was the last day, we had like a small ceremony. Pretty much they said if you were able to get anybody out, whether it's from your office or your family, and they're, able to come out. It was held at the Tallahassee area, their main office. And so, again, all I did was get the paper and got on the road to go home. And I was just like, yeah, so over this. So, side note, when it came to like the actual month that I was there, when it came to, again, the other people that were there, it was a matter of, hey, I don't want to deal with y'all. I was too locked in. That was the main thing. But, some of them were cool people I was able to learn from. They all came from different backgrounds. Some were coming straight out of high school. We had some that were former officers moving into this area of the juvenile probation. But, it was, very different group of people all mixed together to take these, certification exams. While I was out there, it was again, interesting time. Didn't really do too much. Tried to find a few parks, played basketball. Mostly chilling out in the Chinese buffet, which obviously now when I think about it, I maybe should have chilled out, but the way our roads were set up, I obviously couldn't cook anything. And the food that they had on campus wasn't the best at all. Like, I can't tell you any good meals. Like, the main thing that everybody was trying to hype up before I got there was the chicken that they have on, I think it was Thursdays. And I was just like, yeah, I'm so good off that. So, yeah, it was an interesting time, but the main thing that I didn't like while I was up there was the fact that I ended up missing the birth of my nephew. So it was just like the isolation and the focus was kind of just like, yeah, I'd rather be somewhere else. And it's like, even during that time, I was thinking like, why not I just study? And like the amount of effort I was putting in the study for this exam, I was like, why don't I just put in that same amount of effort into studying for the actual subject exam and try taking that again? Because it was like, I still had all my old notes that I was gathering before I got into the position. And, I had a little bit more money now, so it was like I could go buy the actual official exam preps for them. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm going to start doing that because it's like, I know I can study. Like, my mind was clear, sharp enough to study, but I just had to like really see like and think like, is this position worth it? Because am I able to put an effort in a position that I'm just possibly just doing just temporarily? Like, why not put my same effort in studying into a position that I actually want to be in a career field that I actually want to be in. So yeah. Also, I got sick. For I don't know what it was. It was kind of like due to, again, us not being in the best living conditions in the dorms they had us in, and I actually had like a skin breakout, like all over my face, all over my arms, all over my body, and it was pretty rough. And I wouldn't be able to like actually go to a doctor until like after I came back, and like the only reason why I went is just because it was bad. Like I had to like look in the mirror and it's like faces peeling off. I got stuff on my back and it's like, dude, I'm not dirty. So I don't know what this was, but I had to finally go to the doctors. They didn't really give me anything. They gave me one shot and pretty much prescribed some common medicine and let me know it was kind of like I want to think it was like dermatology or something like that. More of a, I don't know what the exact term was, but it was kind of like they told me I came into contact with something that caused my body to break out, and that's what it was. So I was going through that, and it took a while to kind of come off and everything like that. But I think the only thing like I have left over from it, even from this day, because it's been a year now, it's like this small part on my hand, like that still never came off. Like that's like the last part from that whole breakout that I had from a year ago. Well, yeah, it's been a year ago. That was 2024. So yeah, after I got the exam done, pretty much they kind of, fully throw you into the fire position as a probation officer. They like slowly give you some cases. They give you a few cases from other probation officers from your same unit, and then a few that are coming in intake wise. So pretty much the process when it comes to the actual kid being placed on probation or anything like that, it starts off with one, they either picked up a charge or their kid that was coming from a diversion program but they failed it. It goes into what we call the intake process, where we get the information on why their case is coming through. It's either, again, they picked up a charge or they failed a diversion program. Then we're getting all their stuff together to put together a recommendation. So the first thing is usually we search up the database to see if the kid has any prior history, anything in like DCF or anything like that. Then calling out to the parents to set up a actual meeting with them and the kid, just so we can get more information on them from them. So pretty much like a background history. We try to always tell them like, hey, don't tell me the details of the case, because again, since I'm technically a liaison for the court and obviously the probation, but if you tell me anything like, hey, when it comes to this case, I didn't steal that, I stole that. If you tell me that, then obviously I gotta tell the judge or tell the court and state attorney. So that's the main thing we always try to tell parents was make sure we're talking about you, your background. We're not going to talk about the case and the details of that, because obviously we get like a police report anyway, and we get majority of the details. So it's like anything else that the kid would possibly say that adds on to it or maybe wasn't correct and it's a whole different situation, then we'll obviously have to tell the court. So after we meet up with the parent, we do a intake interview, let them say their piece, sign off on some papers, and then we go into the next process of actually putting together a recommendation. So depending on what they say during the intake, the information that we got prior, before we did the actual interview with them, like if we know this is their first time on probation, we may try to make the recommendation to the state attorney to be let this kid go to a diversion program, which is obviously them avoiding probation, and it's them getting a chance to just do some community service, some counseling. They complete that, charge gets dropped, they get to move on like nothing happened really. Um, if it's a kid that we're not really sure on because of the severity of the charge or pretty much the information we get, or if this is a kid who has prior like charges, whether it's from the county we're currently in or another county or possibly another state, then we might recommend probation. And pretty much we send all that information. Well, we type up kind of a summary for the recommendation. Got to have it approved by our supervisor, and then we send it straight to the state attorney, who's going to be the main one at court going over the case, and pretty much let the court handle the process from there. Obviously, when the court case does go, we have to sit in court, so that's another thing, which was sometimes, a drag, but sometimes it was entertaining being in court, just seeing how things go. And pretty much it's like, if the kid is able to afford, the family is able to afford attorney, there might be some way for them to go against our recommendation. If they don't, then they just gotta hope that the judge makes a decision based off what they feel like. Because in the end, we can say, hey, put the kid on probation. State attorney say, put the kid on probation. The kid and the parent can go up to the front of the court and say everything that about the background that maybe we didn't understand or they didn't want to tell us, and the judge can change their mind to either go with our version or possibly go to probation, or possibly even make it an even more severe situation, like might send them off straight to a program, or may talk to the state attorney to say, hey, we might want to just upgrade these charges to adult level charges. So that's like the court process of it. And then after is pretty much seeing what the judge decides to do with it. If they get placed on probation, then they go onto our actual probation side, and we follow up based off whatever the judge recommends. So pretty much it's just kind of like their sanctions. But the sanctions, it could be community service, counseling, some packets dealing with whatever charge or kind of relates to whatever they did, and then the bare minimum things that are on pretty much every kid's is that they gotta go to school and not get in trouble, depending on their background or the charge. They gotta do a drug screen every month, things like that. And obviously, if they happen to violate any of those, then they might get violated. In some cases, depending on, again, the level of the charge or the kid's history, the judge may give them a GRM, which is the Graduated Response Matrix. Pretty much it's kind of like a one-time protection for a technical violation. So as long as the kid doesn't go pick up another charge, so that'll be their protection from a violation. So if a kid, got a referral in school, the Graduate Response Matrix or the GRM will give them a one-time protection, and pretty much whatever the outcome for that needs to be handled, it'll be handled by me and the probation office in-house instead of, doing the paperwork to violate them and send them back to court. So if the kid happens to, get a referral in school, has GRM, I can add on the section of, all right, you gotta write an apology letter to your parents and do an essay on why, I shouldn't be getting referrals in school. And you got a month to get that turned into me, or it turns to an actual violation. So that's what the Graduate Response Matrix or GRM does to help out kids. But sometimes, again, depending on the level of the charge or how the kid approached court, the judge may not give that to them. And so pretty much anything they do can lead to a violation if it's something they weren't supposed to do. And something they might think is minor, like, hey, you missed 2 days of school but didn't say why. All right, that's a violation. Like, kids were getting violated for some things that, other kids would think it's just a slap on the wrist, so it doesn't matter. But it's like as soon as you get on probation, like you have to move completely differently. Like you can't get in any situation at school. You can't get into any arguments with your parents. Things that you would think a normal kid would just get a slap on the wrist for, you can't do that anymore. That's kind of the main thing that kind of like has to be laid out to these kids when they get placed on probation. And so during that whole, once they're on probation, it's just now, monthly check-ins, whether that's meeting them in person or phone calls and things like that. Well, no, it's always in person. The phone calls are for the parents because you have to actually talk to the parents once a month, either phone call, text, email. But the kids you have to see in person once a month and pretty much get an update because all those sanctions that they would get from the court, they all have deadlines. And that's just another way a kid can get tripped up. So pretty much after that, if a kid violates, pretty much what happens is if they have no protection from the GRM or they already used their GRM before due to another prior technical violation, the process is pretty much we put up the paperwork, we say we write up to the actual violation saying like this is what the kid did to violate, and also when it comes to the violations, it can lead to like a chain reaction when it comes to their sanctions. So let's just say kid violates in like 29 days into his probation, but hasn't completed the rest of his stuff. He's getting violated because he got a referral in school, but he hasn't had a chance to finish his actual packet, essay, letter of apology, and counseling. And to be like, all right, we got to mention all of that also. And the judge and state attorney will look at it like, okay, so either this kid, on top of getting in trouble in school, is pushing or delaying completing all of his stuff that the court already ordered him to do, and maybe doesn't care. So we may need to approach this as they need to stay on probation longer, or we can just send them up to a program. So that's another reason why I always try to tell the kids, like, the bare minimum is to stay out of trouble and just complete what they give you. Like, when it comes to the probation, the longest things that the kids will, have to do is usually the counseling. The counseling is usually the main issue is the start point, because the kids don't just get to go into counseling right after they're placed on probation. Usually there's a wait, because there's a wait list for all the kids, because it's not just your kids on your case file, it's literally all the kids within all the units, which is 3, and pretty much a juvenile probation officer can have up to like 30 plus kids. So they gotta wait for spots to get open for the counselor. So pretty much for the kids, it's like you're waiting to get on get off probation because you completed everything and all that, but you haven't even gotten into counseling. So you're thinking you're in the clear because you finished everything, so you're out of trouble. But until you get in and complete counseling, it doesn't matter. And the counseling can go for a while. Like, I think for some of those kids, it can go for like 7 to 8 months, depending on, again, how they approach it. And like, if they're not showing any progress, if they're resistant to actually doing the counseling, if they're missing sessions, then it's just going to go longer. So, yeah, that's the violation part. And then once the violation is approved by at least the actual state attorney, then there's a court date set, and pretty much the judge will make the decision on whether or not this kid needs to stay on probation a little bit longer or possibly goes to a program. When it comes to the programs are a little bit different than what people might think, because there's the actual juvenile detention center and then there's programs. The detention center is usually just for holding. Like, they're there to hold the kids for a couple weeks to a couple months. So, and that's whether they're placed there due to the charge they recently picked up, they're waiting to get sent to a program, or they are doing a stint due to a court order. Because sometimes the court can just order that, all right, you violated, you can go sit in there for about half a month. Matter of fact, you can maybe sit there for a whole month. And that'll be what you need to do, and your probation can end after you're released, or you can just do that and then go back to probation. Which, that part definitely hurt a few kids because they thought they could just do some time and then get out, and it's like, no, you're still on probation. But with the programs, it's like you can sit in there for a while. Like, when it comes to the programs, if you violate to the point where the judge says, hey, I'm going to send you off to a program, then you're going to sit in a detention center until a spot is available, which can be months. Like, there's a few kids that are in there like a full 8 to 9 months. There's even a few that's been in there for close to a full on 12 months, just because they had to wait for spots to be open in the programs. And with the programs, how it's spread out, it's not like, there's this big place for all of them to go. They do that. Like, no, they're spread all over Florida, and they're based off usually the severity of the kids charged, what they're considered level-wise threat level, and sometimes even, their mental state, or whether or not they're a kid that has heavy drug use and needs to get detoxed and cleaned. It's like the programs are all different, and they're all set based off whatever level or whatever they are actually focused on. And sometimes those kids have to wait really, really long just to get a bed and be told, like, all right, this is when you're going to go. And then all that the time that they're doing in the actual detention center doesn't count towards the time they have to actually do in the program. So a kid can be in the detention center for 6 months, get sent to a program, and think, like, all right, all I gotta do is the minimum 6 months. I did 6 months there, so they should maybe let me go. And it's like, no, like, that counts towards nothing. Like, it isn't like adult jail where, an adult, they're sitting in jail for, 8 months to wait for the court case to get handled, and then, like, when it's disposed of, and they said, like, all right, you got, the judge is going to give you 2 years in jail, and we'll have those 8 months you sat in there count towards your time. Like, no, that doesn't happen for the juveniles. Like, not at all. And that's another reason why a lot of parents get angry at the court and us. Is like, that's just how it's set up, at least here. And unfortunately, like, a few kids, they kind of definitely go stir crazy in there, and even some get suicidal, unfortunately. And that was definitely, like, another rough part of that position, just knowing, like, those kids are sitting there waiting for, a spot in the program that might not happen for a while. And the other part of the job is obviously, other than checking up on the kids, it's the process of, like, once they're all done, getting the paperwork set up to actually get them off of probation or supervision from us. And that part can also be tricky, because a kid can be done with everything, been out of trouble, never even had to use their GRM for a technical violation, and the state attorney and the judge can be like, nah, just due to the fact that, the level of this kid's charges, I see that he's all done with everything. I want to keep an eye on him a little bit longer, so we're going to keep him on probation. Like, things like that have happened. But, with this position, like, the only good parts that I actually liked about it was seeing the kids that, first get picked up on charges, possibly get their case either dropped or get sent to diversion, and seeing the kids get off probation. Because, again, the way those kids see you, like, it's fear. A lot of fear. Because And it's not even like, I'm coming with a hammer, I'm there to scare them or anything like that. It's just like they really, really fear you because, you know, something as simple as, they thought that they were late to meeting you, that it was going to lead to a violation. I literally had a kid get hospitalized due to him getting attacked at school. And he's in the hospital bed on the phone with me saying like, hey, I didn't fight the kid, I didn't do anything, I got jumped, and yada yada yada. I'm like, kid, you're in the middle of a hospital, you had an asthma attack, you're literally getting like your back checked, and you're more worried that I'm gonna violate you than your own health. So things like that definitely was the reason why that position was hard. Like, there was a lot of things that made the position just like really not why I wanted to be there. And one of those things is like the fear of the kids ahead of you. Like that was something that kind of, didn't sit well with me, but I understood like the position of it because again, we're supposed to be there to help them out, but at the same time though, our main focus was to help the community and also, do our position as probation officers and to pretty much watch over them and report anything that they may do wrong to the courts. So, not saying that, some of these kids didn't need to be held accountable because, a lot of them did. Like there's maybe like a few kids that I had that came through my caseload that I was kind of like, man, that should just be a slap on the wrist. But there were some that are just like, yeah, you're definitely should be on probation and kind of, lucky that, you're underage because in the other case you'd be like sitting in the adult jail. So when it came to like when I first started, I had a few cases. Like one of my very first intake cases, I think it kind of showed like how attached and how much I like really want to help the kids. I had to deal with a kid who got kicked out of the diversion program due to failed drug screens. And so with me, I'm kind of hard on kids that, deal with drugs or people that get in trouble because of drugs anyway. But it's like when I was finding out about this kid's history and all that, it was kind of like, hey, I got to help this kid avoid not just probation, because if she gets on probation, she's going to fail because the reason why she was, getting kicked out of it was because she was using marijuana, but it was more of on the medical point. She had a medical card, but the problem was the court, or at least my office, was kind of sketchy about it because she was only, I think she was only 15 at the time. So it was kind of like, I don't know what doctor is giving out a medical marijuana card to a 15-year-old, but this kid, it was like, if she wasn't taking marijuana, she maybe would have already, like, killed herself. Like, just hearing the history, talking to her guardians, and then even getting more background details of, like, her family situation, it was kind of like, this kid went through a lot. And, like, even the charge she got wasn't even due to, like, her, like, it was due to a family member. And so I pretty much went all out, and this is my first case, keep in mind. I was going all out to try to make sure, like, hey, this kid has got to get a second chance at the program, or we got to find a way to help her out without her being placed on probation. Because even though there are a few kids that have medical marijuana cards, but they're like our 17 and 18 year olds, and they have to like follow a strict like limit to where it comes to their drug screen parts for it. It's just like with her, it's like, yeah, we gotta find a way to avoid it. And so I literally had pretty much the office against me. Even the supervisor was telling me like, nah, she's most likely gonna be placed on probation. And so typed up the recommendation and mentioned everything to the state attorney and the actual judge. And it was like, when we finally got to a court date, she was the last person in there, and we were in there until I think 2 o'clock. So court is usually starting at like 9. So from 9 to 2, we're just waiting for them to get to her to figure out what they're gonna do in her case. And her guardians are nervous. I'm nervous, and again, we're just like, let's just see what's gonna happen. And they're just calling name after name, case after case. They take a break because we got to 12 o'clock, came back because it was a packed out court that day. And so we get to like 2 o'clock. She's the last one with her guardians. And so I'm just sitting there like, what's going to happen? So the judge, he read over everything. State attorney, like, the state attorneys, they're tough but fair. I'll say that. Like, a lot of people didn't like the state attorneys, but I understood them. And they were just saying, like, yeah, she's got to go on probation not because of the charge. At that point, it was more of, hey, she got kicked out because of drug use. And, judge reading over it, talked to her guardians, and the kids trying to, explain the situation, all that. And they pretty much let them know, like, the only reason why she's got to the point where she's using marijuana is because they've tried every other, proper medical way to try to help her with her PTSD and everything else like that. Because again, this kid went through a lot. Like, I don't even want to go into details, but it was just like she went through a lot, and the fact that she was able to go through all of that and survive to the point where she was able to actually be with guardians that were able to help her out and take care of her the way they were. It was like the last thing that need to be stacked on this kid was probation. Then the judge, he's reading over it, and he's like, all right. He asked them, like, were y'all here the entire court date, the whole court session, from 9 to 2? They're like, yeah. He was like, all right. So y'all were, she did, test positive multiple times and got kicked out of the program. So I can't put her back in the program. So I'm going to put her on probation. And we're all just like, oh, man, no. But he's like, all right. And so their probation is going to be from 9 to 2 p.m. on this date, and you're officially off for probation. And we're all like frozen. Because we're like, what just happened? And so pretty much, he pretty much told her, like, so you're off probation. Hopefully everything goes well in the future, and obviously just stay out of trouble. And we're all just like froze. And so they're crying, and like, they're leaving the courthouse. I'm trying not to cry, let them know, like, hey, I'm glad everything went well. Obviously, any other paperwork stuff, I'll just handle that. But yeah, I'm just glad that you were able to avoid actually being on probation. So that was the first case. And so I was just like, man, this is going to be tough if I put like all my emotions like in every case I get. But it was just like good to see like the judge, like whatever decision they make, pretty much it all ends up in the judge's, court to figure out what they want to do with the kid. But it was good to see like a kid like that be able to avoid probation. And so pretty much with all my cases, again, they all varied. All my caseload was different kids in different situations. Some got slapped on the wrist, some, unfortunately got violated and got into programs, and those were usually the hardest ones that I had to deal with. Like, if it got to the point where, like, I legit thought you had to go to a program, the kid was really messing up. That's the main thing I had to say. And so, again, there was also, when it came to the office life, again, I was just a guy who was just focused on helping everybody out. That was the main thing, just helping out the kids and helping out wherever I needed to be at. But again, the politics and the clickiness of it got worse as the months passed on. But I'll say that I thought, like, during the middle of it, I was going to have a quick exit because, again, I was still studying for the subject exam. on May, what was that, 2024. I ended up passing the PE one. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm about to be out of there. Like, I'm about to be out. I'm about to finally get a teaching position, and I'm going to be out. And so, obviously, I'm applying to teaching jobs on the side, still doing this job. And then I did a few interviews, did one, and I got offered the position on the spot. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then the reason why it was just like, it felt good because it was like, I got the offer. I recently just got hired to be a coach. And so I'm like, everything's just lining up perfectly for me to have a proper exit out. And obviously, it didn't go the way it was supposed to go at all. So, they asked me the actual school that I applied to, and they offered me a position. They ended up, they called my references, and then they said, hey, we need to talk to your current position. Even though on the actual paperwork that I did for the actual, when it came to my resume and things like that for the application, I literally put like, that's like the only place that you don't need to call. Like, you have years of people you can call, you got other references from different positions. Just don't call the current position I'm at right now. And it's like, you already offered me the position. You talked to my other two references, one being one of the former PE teachers that I worked with, and one being a current teacher at a high school that I was working with as a coach. So I'm like, don't know why you would need to call the current position. And they're like, no, we just want to call them just because. And we're like, okay. And it went from, me waiting for, a date for me to get everything rolling to get out to one phone call. And the next time I know, I don't even get a phone call back. I got an email saying, due to a concerning statement made by reference, we will be rescinding the offer. I was shocked because I had already told the job, hey, I'm on my way out. And they called them, and the next thing I know, I'm hearing that the offer got rescinded via email. And so I'm sick because I'm like, now I gotta ask to keep this job that I've already showed that I don't want to be here, and I don't even know why. But all I know is I can literally pinpoint the fact that this job and my supervisor is the reason why that PE job got rescinded. And obviously, I got the professional, let them know, hey, I need to stay. And I didn't approach my supervisor about the situation because it's like, when it comes to my other two references, again, the former PE coach that I worked under, she literally was trying to go out of her way to make sure that I got a job. Like, she wanted me to actually take the job that she had as a PE teacher back at Harborview before she retired, but obviously I didn't have my subject exam completed yet. And the coach from the basketball team, I literally was hanging out with him and his family the night before I did the interview at the school. So I don't think he's going out of his way to, make sure I don't get a job as a teacher. When he was one of the people telling me, like, hey, you should get into teaching, and you might want to think about, doing that to make your schedule in life better. Like, don't think he'd go out of his way. So this guy pretty much had to pinpoint, like, all right, the supervisor for this job went out of her way to clip me out of a position that I actually wanted to be in. So from that point, one, I had to swallow my pride and ask to keep my position there, which was, that was horrible. Horrible. And pretty much from that point, it was just like, when I was telling some of my coworkers, the few that I actually dealt with there, which wasn't that many, I pretty much told them, like, hey, at this point, especially since I know my supervisor went out of the way to make sure I wasn't getting out of there, I'm here until I'm not. Like, if anything ever pops up and I'm given another offer and it's like I can just not deal with references or keep the references to the minimum, then I'm out of here. Like, I'm going to keep it bare minimum. I'm not going to give a 2-week notice or anything like that. I'm just going to be out of here because that never happened. And the main comment that was still ringing in my head from that email was concerning statements. And I'm like, what exactly can be said about me when it comes to my work history or how I've worked here? Like, if there was anything concerning, I would have been told. But obviously, with the reviews that they've given me, flying colors. The way I approach the parents, flying colors. The way I've dealt with the kids, flying colors. And so if I'm able to do that in this position, what was concerning enough for you to say something to where a school doesn't even want to touch me anymore? So pretty much after that, it was kind of just, I'm here until I'm not. So those couple months was rough. Because I think like a month after, fortunately, my nephew passed from this sudden infant death, and that was rough. Obviously, it impacted my brother, and obviously it impacted me because it's like he was just a baby, and he just passed out of nowhere. And then literally a month after, one of the only co-workers that I actually dealt with at that job ended up committing suicide. And so I'm dealing with that, and I'm still in a position of working at a place that I don't want to be at. And it's just like, at this point, I'm working just to make sure my bills are paid. And I got everything else going on in my life, dealing with death, dealing with a co-worker that I actually considered a friend, who worked there for almost over a decade and whatever, just decided to commit suicide. And it's like, I talked to him like the Friday beforehand, and like, again, normal conversation, everything's good with him and his family, all that, just to get called into an office and told like, hey, he killed himself over the weekend. Like, that's like an insane situation to deal with. But obviously, I was able to keep my calm, and because again, I literally just dealt with death like a month prior. So I'm just at the point where I'm just like, I'm in the office, I do the job, I'm not dealing with anybody unless I actually need to deal with them. And so tensions got high on other people's part, is because they felt like, I didn't care about any of them, which was partially true. But at the same time, though, it was just like a matter of, hey, I don't want to be here, like, at all. And so, obviously, again, with the whole clique situations that were going on there was a lot of disrespect coming on the other side. But again, I was just like, whatever. Like, unless they were going to fire me, which they weren't, because, again, the job was getting done. I was doing great at the job. The kids had no issue with me. It was helping a lot of kids get off probation and stay on the right track. Had no issue with parents. So it was like, what can you say to a person who's still doing the job good? All because, they're not going out of their way to be social with the co-workers that have been weird and disrespectful at points. You can't really say anything to that person. So obviously I was dealing with that, and months were passing, people coming in and out of the office, people not even surviving the position, and then the main group just staying where they are. Had to deal with a change at the top due to the fact that our supervisor, she got sick and was pretty much bedridden and didn't come back into the office. And still, I'm not even sure she's back in the office. Like, she got sick in January and hadn't come back. Like, I haven't even heard from her. All we know is that, she was dealing with illness and wasn't able to come back. So, like, all right, we're still got to work. We still got to move. Just like how we have to treat the passing of my coworker where, hey, get your second to grieve over it, but we still gotta work, make sure everything is handled when it comes to this caseload and all of the juveniles that we have to watch over. Like, we just have to keep working and moving. And obviously, time was passing, and I was just kind of just in my mind losing it because, again, I don't want to be here. I have everything that I need to at least become a PE teacher. Like, I got the certification. Obviously, been having my bachelor's. I'm just waiting for a school to have availability. But it was getting to the point where I'm taking interviews in different counties. I'm willing to drive an hour away to do an interview because I'm so ready to get out of here. And so, it gets to August. Well, I guess it gets to July and August 2025. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not getting anything. Because I've done a bunch of interviews, but not hearing anything back. And I'm finally hearing back from local schools. Like, I was hearing from schools out of the county before I was hearing from schools that were literally in driving range, or at least in my own county, until the summer. And I'm thinking, all I gotta get is a job within the county and I'll be straight. And so, hear from a couple schools, do the interviews, literally have like one principal tell me, like, after the interview, which I did great as usual, she told me, like, hey, any other case, like, if you had another subject exam, done, I'd hire you on the spot. But when it comes to this PE position that we literally let you just do our interview for in front of a whole board and all that, I can't give it to you because we're actually looking for a female PE coach. And I'm like, obviously I don't say anything at that time, but I was like walking out, I was like, what was the point of me even being called to do this interview? Like, so it was just like, with that last one, I was thinking it was a wrap. I'm going to be stuck at this job a little bit longer. And it'll be a matter of, do I just implode and leave or luck out into a position? And so we're in August. School starts, I think, on the 11th. I'm thinking, hey, it's a wrap. I'm not going to get anything. And on top of that, the clock is ticking on my, I think, certification. And so I'm just like, dude, there's just no way I can just deal with this. Not for another year. Not even for another school year. Like, I'm losing it. And I get a call. Like, I actually got a voicemail on a random Saturday, calling from middle school. I was like, all right, cool. Called them on Monday, did the interview, and so walking in, meet the principal of the school, and I don't think he had a chance to actually look at my resume yet. He was asking me, like, hey, what work are you currently doing? So I'm like, been a probation officer, still currently a juvenile probation officer. He's like, oh, I was in juvenile probation work also years back, worked my way up, all the way up, got all the way up to, an exam proctor, all the way up where they do the testing and all that. And then he shipped that into becoming, an admin within the school board. And so he ended up working his way up the school board to obviously become a principal of a school. And so he's like, hey, that's great to know and all that. And so get to the interview part. And again, this is for a PE job. Obviously, there's a board there. And obviously, it's like the first interview where it's not even where I have a balance of like, hey, crack a smile, anything like that. I'm just like, I'm so serious and locked in that the room was quiet. Like, I didn't give it a chance for anybody to like, crack a smile or anything. It's just like, it's quiet and I'm answering every question like as best as I can and so serious. And it's just like, yeah, cause I need this. Like, this is the last opportunity before the school year starts. Like, I need to knock this out and get this position. And so, you know, I'm thinking everything's going well because the principal he gives me the calendars for the school year and also the pay year, like how the pay is for the school year. And I'm like, all right, sweet. I'm thinking, all right, hey, that's a good sign. It's a good sign. And so 2 days later, I get a call from the principal, and he's like, hey, just want to let you know, unfortunately, we did find somebody else for the position for the PE coach. So I'm like, back of my head, I'm screaming. I'm like, you know what? I'm already screaming. A lot of F-bombs in the back of my head. But he's like, I did want to see if I can offer you another position. I wanted to offer you a position as the 6th grade dean of the school. I'm like, whoa. Like, because, again, when it comes to that position, like, I learned about it because while I was doing my probation officer job, one of my kids at another school tried to talk to me about it, but the problem because they said they would have hired me on the spot at this other school, but the problem was due to the fact that I had no technical teaching experience. Like the para positions that I had, they don't count that towards teaching experience at all. That's just, it's nice fluff to have when you're applying for a teaching position to say like, all right, you've been around kids, you've been around in the school system, cool, but that's not actual teaching experience, and that's what they don't consider that at all, which is crazy to me, but that's what I was told, and that's why that school couldn't like straight up offer it to me because I had no teaching experience. And I told them like, you sure? Like, hey, I'll take it. Well, the problem is, will it be approved? Because again, I have no technical teaching experience. They're like, no, don't worry, we'll figure out everything. And the main thing, is, do you want the position? I was like, yes, absolutely yes. Yeah. If we're able to get it to work, I'm there. Just let me know if it's approved and when I can get through everything to actually get to the campus. And so he's like, hey, I'll call you back. Let me make a few phone calls downtown just to see if we're able to work everything around to actually get you in that position. So I'm like, cool. So I'm waiting. Get to next week. It's a Tuesday. Get the phone call from the principal again. He's like, yeah, so technically can't offer you the dean position. Again, F-bomb in the back of my head, F-bomb. But there is a position that we can label it as to still make you the dean. It'll just be discipline, coverage teacher, yada, yada, yada. I was like, all right, sweet. So he's like, so you sure you want the position? I'm like, yes, absolutely. There's nothing to think about. Just let me know what the process, like how do I get ready to do the process of everything to actually, get through everything so I can actually get to the campus. He's like, all right, you'll most likely be emailed by the school board, and when they set the date for you, we'll try to get you in either by the end of the month or the beginning of September. I'm like, thank you. I'm going to make sure everything is done, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm there. So, and the crazy thing is, I'm literally outside of the office. I'm in the actual work car, and I'm screaming. And I told my dad also, I'm like, hey, I was in that car screaming my head off. And I'm like, yeah, I finally got my exit. There's no issue of, my references shooting me in the foot. None of that. Like, I got a position, and on top of that, it's actually more than what I expected. And not on a bad way, but like on a good way where it's like, if I would have got the teacher position, the bare minimum you have to do as a teacher is like 5 years to become an admin or a dean, at least in this county. But I'm getting that position offered to me right off the gate. So I'm like, yeah, this is great. This is great. So obviously now all I got to do is survive until I hear the date for the actual part where I have to do all the paperwork and things like that, and drug screens and all that for the position. And so I'm cooling. could care less what happens at this job. Well, still cared about the kids, but it was kind of like at this point, I'm just thinking like, now I got to make sure I exit on a good note, and not because I'm ever going to come back, but just because I'm going to make sure that when I exit, the shock is there, but there's no, hey, we got to scramble to get all this done, yada yada. Like I'm still leaving out on semi-professional way, semi-professional. So, and the one thing that you know I was doing that whole time while I was there, obviously helping, making sure as many kids get off probation, making sure they're all on the right track to get off probation, and that was the main thing I was doing. And like when my coworker passed, I got a lot of his kids from his caseload, and it was kind of like, hey, I need to get as many as them off, just so I feel a little bit better in my head, because I'm pretty sure, you know, the thing that would have set back a lot of those kids is like, hey, the probation officer passed away, but it's like I'm trying to do that for him to where, hey, a lot of the kids that he was working with, they're finally off probation, and I felt good about that. It was like, hey, got to see them get off probation, got to see the majority of kids I was working with, that came to my caseload on the right track to get off probation or got off probation. It was like, just that August, I think it was 7 or 8 kids off probation. Like, I was able to get their paperwork done, sent to the judge, state attorney and judge approved, off probation. And that was like 8 kids within that month. And so, other than that, I was just like, hey, on the side, I'm prepping everything to get everything done. And then I'm just waiting for the date for me to go get my stuff handled. And so, get the date, and I'm like, cool, get everything done. And then they were just like, I told the principal, he's like, all right, cool, we'll set you to come to campus on the 2nd. I'm like, sweet. And so the problem was, obviously the 2nd was due to the fact of Labor Day. And I was just like, man, I gotta get my office cleaned out. Because the thing is though, again, I'm playing it cool. Nobody know I'm leaving yet. Only person that knows is my one coworker. And it's just like, let me, I decided that September 2nd, like I knew the time that I had to be on campus. So I was like, cool. So September 2nd hits. I go to the office. I'm cleaning out all my stuff. I get there before majority of everybody except the secretary, because obviously I got to leave my key and work phone. So clean out my office, got all my pictures out of there, got all my stuff out of there. I already had typed up a small letter, letting them know like, hey, I'm out. So got everything all put in a bag, my office cleaned, all that, and pretty much I was out. Like that scene, like as soon as I got everything put together, I walked out of the office, I drove straight to school campus, and I haven't felt bad about it, haven't looked back at it, and it's like, now I'm finally in a career where it's like, everything is like, not peaked out, but it's like, this is like what all I've worked through when it comes to all those crazy jobs I've been through, all the situations I've been through. It's like the main goal was, hey, I need to be in a position in education where I'm actually doing something, where I'm actually getting like a decent salary finally. It's like all that to finally get here, and it's like, hey, I'm finally there. It's like, with this dean position has been great. Like a lot of, the people there, they're glad that I'm there. They were worried, like, hey, how you gonna feel like dealing with parents and kids on the regular? I'm like, you gotta understand, I came from juvenile where I had to deal with kids who were in a lot of tough situations, had to deal with parents that, had legitimate gripes or completely delusional. So it's like, it kind of matches up. But the thing is, though, it's the severity. Like, a kid get in trouble at school for, like, talking too much in class isn't the equivalent of a kid who has a charge pending because they robbed a store. That doesn't equal up at all. A parent getting mad that a kid got a referral that they really deserved due to them skipping class isn't the equivalent of a parent going off because, hey, their kid's been in a detention center for 5 months and they still haven't heard on whether or not this kid is going to be in a program yet. Like, they don't equal up. So it's like my experience in juvenile probation makes it easier for me to deal with this because the school stuff is minor compared to what I've been dealing with prior. Like, and again, I'm so grateful because, again, it's like the hard work finally paid off. Like, I'm finally in a position where it's like, yeah, those crazy jobs I worked, working in country meats, putting up meats on a rack and making sticks, working in a, warehouse, all those other things, like all of that was a long build up to get to here, but I finally got to here. I finally got to, position I'm proud of and the career field that I want to be in. And so, that's why I had no problem finally getting to where I wanted to be at. So yeah, even though there was way more I could say about the job, but I just felt like, do this in one take and get everything out in a good flow. But yeah, my time as juvenile probation officer was testing, like on a lot of different parts, but I made it through just based off my prior experience with different jobs, and also just due to the fact that like some of the bright sides were, I think, just helping me focus on getting into actually where I wanted to be. That time that I was studying to actually get the certification helped me get back in the mindset to actually properly study for the subject exam. And so that's kind of the main thing. And then on top of that, it was giving me a decent salary to where it wasn't great. Like, it was better than what I was making, as a para and also country meets and all that. But it was like, it was doing enough to where, hey, you can pay your bills, you can pay your rent, and then you just got to survive until the next check, and hopefully just have enough to get to the next check to start over. Like, so, yeah, like with this series, with this whole thing, it's just been, it's been great to talk about what I've been through. Hopefully this can inspire somebody to not just give up and stay stuck at one position, because whatever you actually want to get to, you can. You just have to like keep going at it. Because again, it might be a long time to actually get there. Everybody gets their path to get to where they need to be at time wise, but for me, it took a lot of jobs and a lot of time to finally get in a position that I wanted to be. Not exactly teaching, but actually better. So, hopefully y'all enjoyed, and hopefully y'all will actually take, some inspiration from this if you're somebody who's stuck in a position you don't want to be at right now, whether that's just in life or work. But with that, this is really done, like really, really done. Like anything after this is just going to be like a promotion. Like if for whatever reason I end up being an assistant principal, then I'll make a follow-up, but that'll be a long time. But yeah, pretty much now when it comes to, like, this series is done. For right now, the series is done. When it comes to the channel, one of my New Year's resolutions is try to at least do a video a week. But the problem was just like what the focus needs to be on. But I think I'm just gonna do it mostly on just me, just finally getting in shape really, really seriously. Like, I want to, be so I'm now like in a mental state where I'm like calm because I finally got the career situation and school situation handled. The next main focus is just my actual physical health. So yeah, the videos I'll be doing is mostly just going to be focused on like how my progress is working out and dieting, and it'll just be weekly because that's kind of like the main thing I want to do. But obviously the videos be kind of different. May do like a weekly wrap up, but I'm trying to do it like a different style of video, mostly just show like, hey, this is what I ate. This is kind of like the stats, like where I'm at, how much I dropped, what I ate really. Like that's kind of like the goal when it comes to like the next series, because I'm mostly just gonna be again focused on now the health. So yeah, again, thank you to everyone who watched. Sorry about the delays and things like that, but again, I was glad to, you know, actually be able to give my piece when it came to my work history and overall resume. So yeah.